So one story that hasn't been getting as much coverage as I think it should is Mark Waid versus your boy Zack, Richard C. Myer, formerly Diversity in Comics, now known as Comics Matter. So this has been going on for a while. This case is, in my opinion, just about as important as the Vic Mignogna case, and in a couple of reasons. Number one, if you don't know who he is, he has a channel. It's now called Comics Matter with your boy Zack. He changed it. In my opinion, he should have left it as it was, but it's his decision. That's his choice. It's his channel. I wish he would have renamed it to just your boy Zack, but he decided to go with Comics Matter, your boy Zack. Anyway, that's an irrelevant thing. The TLDR of this, Mark Waid, big guy in the industry, works for Marvel, does some work for DC, had a legendary run on The Flash, wrote the book called Kingdom Come, very big comic book, very well known, and he's got a lot of pull in the industry. Richard C. Myer put out a book called Jawbreakers. I got it. It's a pretty good book. He'll be launching the new one. I think it's called Jawbreakers God King will be coming out soon. He also did another one I didn't read. I forget the name of it. It's slipping my mind. But Jawbreakers is the big one that he's known for. And he did a Kickstarter for it, and he was originally going to publish this book with Antarctic Press. And it was all set. They had a contract. Mark Waid calls them up, and some texts were released. I did a video for that on my other channel a while ago, and text messages were released showing that pretty much Mark Waid bent the arm of them and said, hey, if you want to stay in the comics industry, you need to not make this comic book happen. Pretty much interfered with the contract. Tortious interference. The same thing that's going on with Vic Mignogna. Now, the reason that I feel this case is an important case is because this is pretty much big industry deflecting the little guy. Because he's a little guy. He wanted to make an indie book. And he did make it very successfully, actually. It was very stupid for what they did because I think originally Richard's book was at like 130,000, and then when they pulled all the scrap, it ballooned up to like $400,000 or something. It became a massive success, and they did that, giving it all the promotion. Comic industry never covered the book at all, and it's quite funny how this works out. But basically, independent comics, because of this, have blown up, and the comic industry itself has been dying. I used to do a lot of comic book news, and it just got to the point where it's just like, well, there's not really much to talk about. The main two comic book publishers are down and kind of dying out. Marvel comic books themselves are on the way out. Like, the sales for comics in general are really bad. Comic pros are terrible on Twitter. You think that the voice actors are bad. The comic book professionals are worse. But they don't change. And the difference between the comic book pros and the people, like the voice actors, the anime industry is booming. I'm going to do a video on that probably tomorrow, talking about the anime industry and some problems that it's going to have and how the NPCs actually might kind of inject themselves into the culture over there. There's some stuff going on that I think is worth talking about. But the difference between voice actors and comic pros is the voice actors have a secure future. There's no changing the fact that anime is on a revolutionary kind of takeover. They're like rivaling Pixar and all kinds of stuff. Anime is on its way up with manga. Comics are on their way out. These people are literally like mouthing their way out of a job, and a lot of us tried to change that culture, and it just didn't work. The future for comics is independent comics. I still cover comic books here and there on my other channel, but there's just not that many to talk about anymore. And it is what it is. However, the importance behind this case, though, is big corporate, like I said, slapping down the little guy. So here's the thing that's going on with this trial. It's that it's moving forward. So, according to Bleeding Fool, good little website, they're kind of sticking it to Bleeding Cool, very garbage shill site that pushes corporate comics. Oh, they're doing so good. Comics are so great. They're doing great over there. They're not doing good. They're doing terrible. And Mark Waid tried to do everything he could. He actually has a GoFundMe himself, and he's tried to push by, rallying the NPC. His GoFundMe is not moving at all. Richard C Myers is doing very good. I'm going to put a link to Richard C Myers' GoFundMe in the description. I think it's worth considering a support for that one as well. These are two very important cases. This case and Vic Mignogna's case. Vic Mignogna's case has a lot more to do with believing facts and due process. Richard C. Myers' case, in my opinion, has a lot to do with the little guy going up against corporation, and the labeling of people, calling them extremists and all of this stuff. When they go around and say, "You don't like my ideas? You're associated with a World War II group." You know what I'm saying? So I think his case is important as well. So make sure you check out his GoFundMe and maybe consider throwing a couple bucks towards him too. So Mark Waid has been trying to drag this out, and apparently it is now moving forward. I'm sure Nick Recato will go over this as well. But as previously covered, Richard C. Myer has sued Marvel Comics writer Mark Waid on 2 causes of action. Defamation for statements Mark Waid allegedly said on Twitter and at a comic show in Houston. Yes, he actually said, "If you see Richard C. Myer here, let me know so I can go confront him," basically. Very crazy stuff. Mark Waid is a very disturbed man, for sure. Like I was saying before, there's stories of him punching holes in his wall, yelling at people he works with. Allegedly, there was a person he worked with that didn't like, and that person's mother or wife or something had passed away. Mark Waid sent him black roses. He's a very evil person. He also is like 7 years old, not married, no children, and has a room full of toys. It's very, very strange guy, Mark Waid. So Mark Waid's attorney, Mark Zaid, that's a true statement. I skipped this. Tortious interference with a contract between Mr. Myer and Antarctic Press to publish Mr. Myers' book, Jawbreakers. I covered this on my other channel, like I said. There were text messages that were released from Antarctic Press showing that Mark Waid did, in fact, push tortious interference or do tortious interference, told them basically, if you publish this book, you're going to have a hard time getting into comics. So Mark Waid's attorney, Mark Zaid, yes, that is a funny joke that Mark Waid hired Mark Zaid, filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit for lack of jurisdiction, as Mr. Waid is not a Texas resident. Texas is where Myer is pursuing the case. A federal magistrate has reviewed the case and issued a recommendation for it to proceed on the tortious interference cause of action, but recommended the defamation case of action be dismissed. So tortious interference is moving forward, but the defamation is being dismissed. Now, this isn't that big of a deal because tortious interference is still going. That's really the big draw here. That's where all the damages are going to go, because there was a lot that happened there. Richard C. Myer had to package his own comics. The comic was late because he had no idea what he was doing. Originally, Antarctic Press was going to do all of that stuff. They were going to fulfill it, I believe. They were going to help him learn how to do some things. Instead, he had to do all that himself because Mark Waid interfered and got that contract terminated. And that's going to be a lot of recouping. And I really want to see Mark Waid. I really want to see him get sued. Not just sued. I want to see him lose in the lawsuit. Sorry. So Mr. Myers' attorney has filed a response to the magistrate's recommendation, noting that he referenced Mr. Wade's alleged defamatory conduct as being only on Twitter. When additional statements were made at a comic festival in Houston, the local judge has decided to allow Myers' team to amend the lawsuit to better state the defamation case of action as referencing events occurring in the state of Texas. This is all very good news for Richard Myer. And I agree. I think that is great news. I want to see Mark Waid pay because he should pay. He's a jerk. There was no reason for him to do that. And the thing is, all of these comic pros are always telling him and other people, put your money where your mouth is. Why don't you put a comic book out there and see how it does? Then he did. He did put a comic book out there. And he was going to put it in stores. And guess what? Oh, no. You're not allowed in comics book stores. At the end, it doesn't even matter, I guess, because he was quite successful. And it really revealed a lot of things about the comic industry itself. These people literally were saying, you know, we're not going to serve the customer. You had comic book stores saying, we're not going to carry that comic. I don't care if they want it or not. You're literally going against the consumer. So a lot of the times when I hear these comic book stores, you know, going under, it's like, well, it doesn't seem like you're very consumer friendly. There are some that are, but there certainly are some that aren't. Like, I could get into this all day, but they don't have to bow down to Marvel, but yet they do. Comic book stores are the ones with all the power. Anyway, this is great. They do get to amend it to make the defamation sound more approachable. So they have the option to fix that. But in any case, the tortious interference trial is going forward. So that's golden. That's moving. It's making more progress right now. Like the Vic Mignogna case is stalled at TCPA and stuff and Discovery. This case is moving forward, and I wish Richard the best of luck. I will cover this as things like this come out, but I thought this is worth talking about because the trial is proceeding. We are now moving in to a trial, and I think that's important and good. I'm glad to hear it, and I hope Mark Waid pays. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you thought about this video. What do you think about the Richard C Myer case? And make sure you're still subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification bell if you're new. Subscribe. Check out my Twitch, trying to build that up. There's a link to my Twitch in the description, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.